And we are having 2 virtual public meetings for the City of Tucson Flood and Erosion Hazard Management updates. We welcome you and your input to any of these documents and updates. My name is Elizabeth Leibold. I work at the City of Tucson Transportation Department of Transportation and Mobility, and I am the community rating coordinator for the city, and working in floodplain administration and engineering division. I'd like to introduce our other presenters today. We have Fred Felix, Tucson Engineering Floodplain Administrator, John Van Winkle, Department of Transportation and Mobility Engineering Management, Peter McLaughlin, Lead Planner with Department of Planning and Development Services, Craig Saltzman is in Engineering and Floodplain Administration at the Department of Transportation and Mobility, and Patrick Hartley, Transportation Program Coordinator at the Department of Transportation and Mobility. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. If you are calling in, we ask that you stay muted for the entire meeting. You will not be able to ask questions over the phone, but you can text your questions to 520-338-8515. That phone number again is 520-338-8515. For those joining virtually, you can ask questions in the chat box to the right. We will have a question and answer session after this presentation. This video is being recorded and will be posted for later review or for those who were not able to participate today. I'm going to go ahead and start our presentation. Again, welcome to our virtual meeting. So again, this is a City of Tucson Flood and Erosion Hazard Management Update Summary. This is a virtual public meeting. It's held today from noon to 1 o'clock. The agenda for today will include 4 presentations. One is on the regulatory updates to our floodplain ordinance. The second is to our floodplain management plan. It's a update. Our original plan was adopted in 2016. This is regarding the update. We will then move to the Tucson Levee Maintenance Manual, and then we will go to Move Tucson. And then we'll open it up for questions and comments. I'd like to introduce to you our first presenter, Fred Felix. Fred?
Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a good day. It's really great to have these virtual meetings because I hope that you brought a lunch with you, and that will at least help satisfy your hunger while we're presenting to you. So my name is Fred Felix. I'm the city engineer for the City of Tucson. By charter, I'm the floodplain administrator, and we're here to talk about some of the things that we're doing within our community to better our community when it comes to drainage. Now, we live in a desert, and some people might ask, why do we need to be concerned about that? Well, if you've lived here long enough, you know that when it rains, it pours. We get monsoons, and we haven't had much of that this year, just waiting to see what will happen with that. But when it does rain, typically it's focused in one particular area, and we get these downpours, and our streets are a major conveyance for drainage, urban drainage. And so we are concerned about that. We are concerned about where that water goes. We have washes that are dry most of the year. And so we coordinate the planning, the programming, the construction and maintenance of all of our projects within our Department of Transportation and Mobility. We also work with the Pima County Flood Control District to look at regional fixes that might help reduce the volume of water that would be passing through our community. And it's just so important that we work together to try to manage this. Now, we answer to the mayor and city council because they are the floodplain board. And so we will be taking the changes that we will be talking about today to them for approval and adoption. Now, you'll hear some acronyms and some terms that maybe you've never heard before. One of them is FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And I know that you've heard of that because they provide assistance to communities, and we're part of the National Flood Insurance Program. And so they are able to provide federal funding for those that have experienced disasters, and they do that in the way of flood insurance. Now, we're also, you'll hear something called CRS, Community Rating System, and that has to do with our current rating. Any community that's part of the program, they become part of this, and the things that you do to help eliminate the number of times the federal government has to put out money to help people, they give you some points for that. And so we're currently at a rating of 6, which allows us a discount to your premiums, your flood insurance premiums. Now, flood insurance can be quite costly, and if this was not done, then it really would have a big economical impact within the community. So by doing this, we are saving our taxpayers quite a bit of money, and that money just goes back into our economy. And so I just wanted to let you know how that works. So today you're going to hear things about floodplain ordinance, floodplain management plan, erosion hazard setback, levees, and different things like that. But we have staff here who will better explain that to you. So I'd like to turn this over to describe some of the regulatory changes that we're considering. John Van Winkle, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Fred. My name is John Van Winkle. I'm an engineering manager with the Department of Transportation and Mobility. I will go through the proposed updates to Chapter 26 of the Tucson City Code, which is our floodplain ordinance, and explain the nature of those changes and why we're making them. Elizabeth, can you go to the next slide? So the first change I would like to discuss is an update to the city's erosion hazard setback requirements. The reason we have an erosion hazard setback is to ensure that property is not damaged during a flood event, and to make sure that new construction meets minimum setback requirements from water courses. The change in this case is going to be an update to the setbacks from our regional water courses in the city of Tucson, which are the Rito, the Pantano, and the Santa Cruz River. The purpose of updating these setbacks is to take into account increased flow rates in those channels since the original setbacks were determined, and also to make a reduction in those setbacks more stringent. So we are going to remove the option of changing or reducing an erosion hazard setback unless a variance process is followed. We are adding language to the variance process to outline what those requirements would be, so that we're all, able to take an additional look at that and make sure that if there is a reduction, that we all feel comfortable with the assumptions that are being made. So these are, next slide, please, Elizabeth. So this is the proposal to update. There is an increase over the previous values, but again, the reason for the increase in the minimum setback is an increase in the amount of water that is entering these systems since the original setbacks were determined. So here's an example. It's not a regional water course, but it is an example of bank erosion. So we have minimum standards, minimum setbacks for structures, for foundations of structures from an erosion hazard setback. that need to be met to make sure that the building is safe during a flood event. Next slide, please. There are additional changes to the floodplain ordinance. Most of them are additions to definitions, clarifications of definitions, and I will go through those here. So the first change is to update the elevation requirements for critical facilities. Critical facilities in the city are such things as fire stations, schools, hospitals, basically important structures. We have elevation requirements for those in our current ordinance, and the update is going to clarify to which standard that building needs to be updated. It will apply a more stringent elevation requirement to critical facilities, which is a good thing. The next update is going to be to add a definition. You'll be introduced to our levy manual a little later. We need to add a definition for levy to the floodplain ordinance to match our proposal in the levy manual. We're also adding a definition for a repetitive loss property to our floodplain ordinance. A repetitive loss property definition is not currently in the ordinance, and it's important to add as part of our community rating system. We are also updating the definition of a retention and detention basin to match recent proposed updates to our stormwater detention retention manual. We are adding more language to the minimum equipment elevations that for new construction or substantial improvements where equipment needs to be elevated above the flood elevation. So we're adding clarifications on what that type of equipment is, which will help new construction and designers properly build. We are removing a development criteria from our detention retention guidelines in the ordinance and housing those in our update to our detention retention manual, so that we are keeping the design criteria as much as possible in that manual. The other update, as I mentioned earlier, is to clarify the process for variance if a reduction in erosion hazard setback from the regional water courses is requested. So we've added some clarifying language on what the minimum standards, should a variance be requested for those setbacks, what the minimum standards would be. And last but not least, the final amendment is to clarify how and when the Stormwater Advisory Committee, which needs to review all proposed changes to the floodplain ordinance, how and when and who convenes them and what their responsibilities are. So with that, that's a summary of the changes. It was quite a bit in a short period of time. We'll have time during the Q&A to discuss further. But with that, I'm going to pass it over to Peter McLaughlin to discuss our floodplain management program.
Thank you, John. I'm Peter McLaughlin with the Entitlements section of Planning and Development Services Department, City of Tucson. And I'll start with a little background on the floodplain management plan. For those of you who may not have been involved initially in the process 4 years ago, it was actually adopted a little over 4 years ago. It was August 9th of 2016. The Mayor and Council adopted the floodplain management plan. And it's essentially phase 5 of the Tucson Stormwater Management Study. The floodplain management plan is updated on an annual basis with a formal review and update to take place in every 5 years. So keep in mind that this is an update to the floodplain management plan. It was determined earlier this year that the formal update would take place in 2020. And 5 meetings were held in the spring and summer of this year. The first meeting was actually live in person prior to the shutdown, and subsequent meetings were held virtually due to the situation. At the first meeting, a tally was taken, and the result of that was that we would focus on revisions or updates to the action item list. Again, the mayor and council adopted the Tucson management plan a little over a year ago, and a little over 4 years ago in 2016. And the floodplain management committee meetings for this year include the formal update and revisions to the floodplain ordinance. And the public has access to the draft of the proposed update, and revisions can be made, or feedback can be made prior to the projected readoption, which is scheduled before mayor and council at the meeting date of September 22nd, a little over a month from now. In the updates, some newly identified flood hazard focus of concerns are watercourse maintenance, riparian floodplain tree canopy, floodplain and erosion hazard management sustainability, homelessness in city watercourses, and post-fire risks, which has become lately a significant of significant importance. There are 7 vulnerability categories in the floodplain management plan as adopted by the mayor and council that have been studied for changes and prioritization. And these 7 categories are public infrastructure conveyance, flood areas with utility, municipal structures, urban high density flood areas, private drainage infrastructure, natural floodplains, flood hazards associated with vegetation, and flood hazards associated with geomorphology or terrain. And with that, I'll turn it over to Elizabeth again.
Hi. I just wanted to confirm that you can hear me. Okay, so as Peter was saying, the floodplain management plan committee discussed the action items for those prioritized vulnerabilities categories, those 7 categories. And each action item is being considered for either being changed or continuing. Let's say we have an action item that we're working on and we're continuing to work on it, so we'll retain that action item. We may look at an action item that we feel that needs to be amended. So we're looking at adding to those action items. And then some action items are being assessed to see if they've been completed or not. Stakeholder input was received by email and through our Teams meeting. Quite a few of the action item suggestions by the committee have been included in the update. As a summary, this plan provides a path forward for our city mayor and council to direct flood and erosion hazard management. It also identifies key projects and those studies that should be prioritized, and helps the general public understand the unique characteristics of floodplain and erosion hazards that exist in the Tucson area. I'd like to now introduce Craig Saltzman, who's going to go over our levy manual.
Thank you, Elizabeth. As Elizabeth said, my name is Craig Saltzman, and I'm with City of Transportation and Mobility Department, Floodplain Section. Some watercourses within the City of Tucson have protection from the jurisdictional 100-year flood. Some bank protection improvements were built to the 50-year storm event condition, which may not contain the jurisdictional 100-year flood. Some watercourses, especially watercourses, have levee structures that are like elevated berms protecting the land behind it from the 100-year flood. Next slide, Elizabeth. Classic levees are constructed with soil cement or concrete covered earthen material to create a berm to keep floodwaters from inundating an area during the jurisdictional flood event. Next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide. Tucson Levee Manual provides maintenance procedures for existing levees within the city of Tucson. The primary purpose of this manual is for maintenance, although it was created to comply with FEMA levee regulations and guidelines, and provide requirements and procedures for levee inspection, levee inventory, levee design, and levee survey, specifically for levees within the city of Tucson. The levee manual document will be presented to City of Tucson Mayor and Council, who acts as the city's floodplain board, for their consideration and adoption. We anticipate approval of this document. City staff developed this document based on Army Corps of Engineers levee inspection procedures and with consideration of Pima County Regional Control District levee checklist. Any questions can be directed to me or the city floodplain administrator at the end of this presentation. At this time, I'd like to introduce Patrick Hartley, Transportation Program Coordinator, and he will present Move Tucson.
Great, thank you, Craig. I just have a very brief update for you all on where we are with the Move Tucson long-range transportation planning process. So for those of you who may be unaware, Move Tucson is the city of Tucson's currently under development 20-year transportation plan. We'll be identifying project priorities and really a roadmap for investments over the coming 20-year planning horizon. We're about halfway through the process right now, and we just wrapped up the first phase of public input on August 7th, so just about a week and a half ago, and I'm happy to announce that we received about 4,500 survey responses of people telling us what their transportation priorities are for the city of Tucson, as well as garnered about 800 unique project ideas from the residents of Tucson and surrounding communities. We're now transitioning into the project development phase of the process. So we're taking all of that public input we received and using it to identify what our 20 years of project priorities are, what our investment priorities are in our transportation system. And as we develop that, kind of concurrently with the floodplain management plan, we'll be working with the floodplain administrator to identify where we can have kind of maximum impact through our transportation projects. A, by looking at what the drainage needs are on those projects that are identified so that we can do kind of a full cost accounting, at least planning level full cost accounting as we do project development, as well as looking for where there are opportunities to kind of improve our floodplain management through investments in our transportation system. So that's what we'll be focusing on through those discussions. We are planning on submitting a project list to the Regional Transportation Authority, who is also developing the RTA Next Plan as we speak, looking for regional funding by November 30th. And then we will also be looking to wrap up the Move Tucson plan in the spring of 2021 with a full list of projects, those that would be funded by Move Tucson and those that would be looking for other funding sources. And with that, I can turn it over to Elizabeth for some comments and questions on all the presentations we've seen today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Patrick. At this time, I'd like to go over a couple of the items that we discussed earlier regarding making comments. If you are calling in, we ask that you stay muted, and you won't be able to ask questions over the phone, but you can text your questions to 520-338-8515. That's 520-338-8515. For those joining virtually, you can ask questions in the chat box to the right. You can type in your questions or comments, and we will try to answer your questions. You can also email us at TucsonFloodErosionInfo@TucsonAZ.gov, and we can take your questions through email. I'm going to check to see if we have. So we're looking through our question and answer list here. We have posted some contact information in that question and answer area, so you can go to those links. You can also email your questions or comments again to Tucson Flood Erosion Info, that's all one word, at tucsonaz.gov. We're going to go ahead and allow for a few minutes here to generate some questions. In the meantime, I'm going to go back to the presentation and share with you some video of some debris flow. Let's see, let me make sure I'm in the right setting. I think I am. Make sure this is clear. Does everybody see the video? So this is the.
It's not moving for us, Elizabeth.
Oh, okay. Is it moving now? Do you see the debris flow?
Yeah, for me, the video is not playing.
It's
Oh,
just
okay.
it's a still shot of the debris flow, but it's not actually playing.
Okay, let me see if I can get this to work. Hold on. Back to, where am I? Try it again. Oh, that didn't work. How about now? Do you see the video? Do you see the video now?
Yep.
Okay, so this video was taken in July. This is the debris from the Catalina fire. It's coming down through one of the water courses that flow from the Catalinas. It looks like there's steam or smoke, but that's actually dust as the debris is hitting the dusty riverbed there. There's a standing wave of debris flow, so it shows you there's a mix of fluid and debris, and you can see the dark coloration of the burnt vegetation flowing down here from a storm event. Okay, let me see if I can get that to stop. Oops. Do you see now the Santa Barbara slide? I'm going to go into that. I'm going to share that next video. Let's see if it's going to. Do you see the next video?
Yes, Elizabeth. Well,
Okay, so we went through our 2 videos and we're going to check to see if there's any questions. So it looks like the audience doesn't have any. Oh, here's Mead. Yay! Thank you, Mead, for a comment. Mead Myers from PEMA Association of Governments, and she says, thank you. I heard you mention that the update of the floodplain management plan focused on action plan items. Does this include a summary of accomplishments or actions, or more of an update of new actions and priorities? Actually, Mead, this is a combination. It shows what has been accomplished. It should be actually future action items that want to be done, but we will be noting those accomplishments as well in the floodplain management plan. The action item list is in the report. There's a 3-page spreadsheet of the list of those action items, and that will have all the changes and amendments and the action items that are being proposed for the update in the report. So they will be more of action items and priorities, but we will be acknowledging accomplishments as well. I hope that answered your question, Mead. See, I am looking through. So right now it's 12:32 p.m. It's over half an hour into the meeting. I'm going to wait a little bit longer to see if anybody joins in and has comments. We appreciate everybody's input that has been given to the committee. There's been input from PEMA Association of Governments. We've had Pima County Regional Flood Control District provide constructive comments. We've also had comments from the various consultants. We've had some excellent comments from Irene Ogata over at Tucson Water. And for some people, a frequent question that we get calls on for floodplain is am I in the flood zone? And that information is important to check with the city staff, because we have floodplain mapping not only for FEMA but also for local floodplain areas. Erosion hazard setbacks are also important to check out, especially disclosure for realtors. Some other questions that have come up from this floodplain management plan are, how does this impact our CRS rating? Well, currently, like Fred had mentioned, we have a class rating of a 6. This class provides us with a 20% discount in those high-risk zones. And everywhere else in the city, anybody can get a flood insurance policy and get a 10% discount because of our Class 6 rating. Trying to think of some other questions that we've had during the meeting. There was some discussion about changes to the floodplain management plan. However, the plan itself was actually originally developed with the guidance of a FEMA consultant. And so we found that the report went through the CRS rating review, was accepted and got full points. And so we're happy with our result. There's always room for improvement, and so we're looking at all suggestions. Let's see. A lot of people are asking, when's the monsoon going to start? Well, we don't know what Mother Nature is going to hold for us. There is one almanac that's indicating that we might have slightly more monsoon or Chubasco type storm events through the fall season. So although this summer has been somewhat dry within the city area, unlike Oro Valley last night, I guess, or was it last night? Anyway, they had quite a downpour, but we have yet to see super heavy rains this year. In some regards, it's a great thing because we don't want to see the type of flooding that's occurred in some of our previous years where homes were flooded. Let's see, some more questions that people like to ask. Who's in charge of the floodplain in the city? Isn't the county in charge? That's a common question. Actually, the city of Tucson has its own NFIP community status with FEMA. We have our own floodplain ordinance. The county, an unincorporated county, has their ordinance, and the Pima County Flood Control District works with us and other communities to assist us with floodplain projects that we request. So when it comes to regulations, the city of Tucson has their own floodplain use permitting. We have our own maps. Although this county helps us with those maps, they are the city of Tucson. So we have our own regulations for floodplain. And like Fred mentioned, our floodplain board is our mayor and council. At this time, I'm going to double check our questions and answers to see if we have any additional information, comments, or questions. I don't see any at this time. I'd like to invite Fred Felix to make any additional comments to the presentation.
Well, I'm back, and I didn't break for lunch. I hope that there's nobody out there that's hangry, but we do get quite a few questions having to do with what can you do. Our street floods every time it rains, and we mentioned the other earlier that when it rains here, that we get a downpour that streets cannot handle. Now our streets will typically handle most rain events, and it takes a few minutes before that rainwater can go down the street. So there's nothing to worry. We have over 320 miles of washes within the city of Tucson, and we have a limited staff. And so they are doing, not only are they closing wash crossings, but they're doing wash maintenance. They get out there before the monsoon season, the rain seasons. We do get a winter season, and so they take care of that as well. But there's not as much vegetation during that time because things go dormant. If you have a question or if you have a complaint, or if there's something that we can help you with, you can contact TDOT@tucsonaz.gov and create a work order, and our streets crews will get out there and get to it as quickly as they possibly can.
Thanks, Fred. One thing also to note is something that's special to the city of Tucson area is the fact that we have limited amount of storm drains compared to other cities around the United States. This may have been because in early Tucson years, the question came up, hey, do we want to have taxes to do sidewalks and storm drains? And I guess that back then the answer was no, let's use our horses or whatever they were thinking back then. So we do have the challenge of having limited storm drain system today. It is a struggle to find funding for floodplain improvements. We are vigorously attempting grants over the last several years with DEMA and FEMA. So, and like mentioned, I think we mentioned that we did get one grant for the Christmas wash and Cushing Street levee. So that grant goes toward a feasibility study for both those projects. You can email us if you have questions on that specific grant. So the other characteristics of the city of Tucson, unlike the majority of the area, Tucson actually has different soil types. We have hydrologic soil groups A, B, C, D, and we like to jokingly say caliche is a fifth soil group. So many Tucsonans understand the difficulty of caliche. It's a marble-like substance. It doesn't appear in any given specific location, but it does show up in various locations throughout the city. And like caliche, the hydrologic soil groups C and D are harder soils, and those tend to not have percolation or infiltration into the soil as easy as the sandier soils that we see, let's say, in the bottom of our regional water courses, where those are hydrologic soil group A. In the Phoenix area and Marana, they have those sandier soils. In Tucson, we have the harder soils. And with that comes different aspects. For instance, we have more terrain changes throughout the city. In sandier locations, you have a flatter terrain, and you can kind of see that in the Marana area and the Phoenix area. They have flatter soil areas. And so when it's that sandier soil, you have faster percolation, faster infiltration. In the city, because we have challenges with that, we find that allowing the flow to continue through the storm drain system, our streets, the water courses, the regional water courses, this provides a flow regime that benefits detention systems, and it allows for feeding of our riparian floodplains and infiltration into those larger water courses. So detention is found to be a highly sustainable approach when we look at what works in the Tucson area. Detention is where you might have a basin constructed where it has a bleed off so it can continue to pass through without being detained more than 24 hours. Our drain down time is 24 hours as a regulation because we don't want to have standing water that can cause various issues such as mosquito-borne illnesses, cracking of foundations, mold issues, and increasing the potential for termites. So that's why we'd like to promote detention where possible so that those systems can function and provide a sustainable design to various systems such as regional basins and water harvesting features. If you have questions on that, you can contact the city at Tucson Flood Erosion Info at tucsonaz.gov. I'm now going to go back to the question and answer to see if there's any other additional comments or questions. Mead Meyer is asking about the Tucson Detention Retention Manual update. John, do you see that question? Shall I read it to you? Would you like to respond?
Sure, Elizabeth. Yeah, I see it. Yep. Sure. So the question for Mead was the city of Tucson. I'll do the first half and then we'll pass on the levy question to Craig. Okay. Was the city of Tucson Detention Retention Manual update connected to this update or separate? So it is connected to this update, but it's really only definition changes and clarifying some language in the ordinance to match the update that's proposed for the Detention Retention Manual. So yes, they are connected to one another. The detention retention manual update was in the works, kind of in parallel to this as well. Yep.
So the next part of that question from Mead Meyer from PAG asks, could you please tell us more about the levies? So in the city of Tucson, we have various types of levies, as Craig kind of alluded to. And so he described what a levy is. Essentially, it's a type of control of the floodwaters so that it doesn't cross over that structure and flood an area that might include homes or buildings. So levee structures hold back water. There are a number of levees within the city of Tucson that are recognized by the Army Corps of Engineers. There's approximately 17 within the city of Tucson. Approximately 5 of those are city of Tucson maintained or controlled, and the other remaining levees are either owned by the railroad or by maintained and or owned by the Pima County Regional Flood Control District that provide maintenance for those structures. For instance, the Tucson Diversion Channel has sections of levees on it. The levee manual is, like Craig mentioned, is required because we're trying to develop a maintenance plan for those levees. The maintenance plan is the requirement per FEMA, and so we are moving this document forward. And the main focus, like Craig mentioned, is for the maintenance aspects, and it includes a maintenance checklist and requires an engineer to actually go to these levees and check for compliance. Craig, did I get everything on that, or do we need to add anything else?
Sounds good, Elizabeth.
Mead, I hope that answered your question. Let's see. Peter, Fred, John, can you think of anything else that we'd like to share with the public in the public meeting?
Elizabeth, can you talk more about our CRS rating of 6? For my own clarification, what would be involved in a higher rating?
Right now, the city of Tucson has approximately 2,050 points, something like that. And you need 2,000 points to maintain a rating of 6. I believe the next bump up would need approximately 500 points. So another 440 or 400 points would be needed to get to the next level. I'm not 100% sure on those numbers, but it means that we need to do different activities or add to our activities that we do now. And doing all these particular action items that we're doing, like for instance, adding the definitions are actually getting us extra points. It depends on what the action items are. The manual's kind of involved, but various actions that we do make a difference to our points. The point system was updated, I believe, in 2017. Around that time, many communities that are part of the NFIP program were assessed during their audit, and there was quite a few in Arizona that actually got a drop in their class. In other words, they got a worse rating. And Fortunately, the city of Tucson maintained their rating, and so we did not have any impact to the change in our discounts. The focus is, one of the big focus in community rating system is the preservation of riparian floodplain and documenting those areas of preservation. Unfortunately, in the city of Tucson, we have quite a bit of urban development, so that can be more of a challenge for our community as opposed to, let's say, the unincorporated county area. But we still have various regulations that protect our riparian floodplain. For instance, we have the floodplain ordinance that says that you can't unnecessarily alter riparian floodplain. And then we look at the ERZ, the Environmental Resource Zone Code, Overlay Code, that talks about protecting floodplains that have no defined channel embankment, and they're designated as ERZ flood areas. Those water courses have been adopted by Mayor and Council and are shown on our map Tucson. Those particular floodplains are not allowed to have encroachment of the ERZ area. So we have ERZ protection, and within that code, it specifically explains what's allowable and what's not allowable for riparian floodplain disturbance. So when we talk about what's unnecessary and what's necessary disturbance, we can see that in that section of the code, and it specifically explains that trails are allowed to disturb riparian floodplains. So if you have a trail that's in that floodplain, that can be constructed. We also have allowable utility crossings. So let's say a utility sewer line needs to cross a water course. We make sure that it's reviewed to make sure it's crossing in a perpendicular manner to flow to lessen adverse impact. And we make sure that it's built at a scour depth that protects the structure and the floodplain. And then the third item that is considered a necessary alteration of the riparian floodplain is necessary access roads. For instance, we wouldn't be allowing a parking lot to be put in a riparian floodplain, but we would be considering an access point. Let's say somebody has a property that has a floodplain running through the middle of it, and they'd like to access the rear of that lot. So they propose a crossing across the floodplain in a minimal disturbance manner or design, and so that can be approved so that they have access to their property. Other riparian floodplain protection codes include WASH Ordinance, which is also Tucson code, protecting designated water courses with the WASH designation. Those types of washes have a protection in the 50-foot study area where the riparian floodplain exists. Studies are required to be submitted to assess those areas. And we also have some other technical standards that help protect riparian floodplain. Let's see, what else is different and special about the city of Tucson? We talked about soils, we talked about riparian floodplain, and we talked about the CRS program and how that impacts the community. Something to keep in mind, although we have floodplain regulations, we also have floodplain regulations are based on our FEMA regulations. And so we have a floodplain ordinance. We also have a stormwater ordinance. That's based on ADQ or EPA regulations that look at water quality. That's different from floodplain regulations. So we wanted to differentiate that. But it does bring up the important topic of water quality. So in the city of Tucson, there are many potable wells throughout the city, and it's a high density of these potable wells, And so water quality is very important to the city. And we look at that from all aspects of review when we're doing our floodplain use permit reviews. At this time, I'm going to check our question and answer box. So we're looking at the questions here. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up. No, that's, I think that one's answered. Okay, so we're going to be wrapping up our public meeting that summarizes the documents. And I'd just like to let everyone know this video is being recorded and will be posted for later review on our website. For those of you who were not able to participate this afternoon or had technical difficulties, so it will be posted on the Floodplain Administration website. And I'll leave it up to, let's see, Fred to go ahead and close out the meeting.
All right. So you've heard a lot of information, and you can find a lot of the information we talked about on our website. I believe that was mentioned. Go to the city page and transportation, look for engineering, and you'll find Floodplain administration there. You'll see some links to many of the things that we've talked about. The city of Tucson is looking to do as much as we possibly can to improve the health and safety of our community. And we're working together with other agencies, and we look forward to hearing from you to get your comments on some of the things that we're doing. We want to make sure that that you are heard, and also that we could take a look at some of the things that you are dealing with. So thank you. I hope if you haven't had lunch, now's a good time to do it. And we thank you very much. See you next time.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.